Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. I am, of course, your host, Matthew Zator, and, of course, joined in by my fellow prospect expert, Peter Baracchini. How you doing, Peter?
Doing great. Always happy to, do the show. And I just want to point out, a few weeks ago, I totally forgot I was supposed to mention this last week and I totally forgot to do that. But 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about your latest draft rankings, I accidentally botched the date for the Frozen Four. And I thought the championship game was on the 9th. And I thought when we were recording, it was the 8th, but it was the 9th and it happened that evening. So if there were any confusions, that is my bad. I lost track of the days.
It's all good. Also joined in by Devin Little. How you doing, Devin?
Always good to be here with you boys. How you doing, Matt?
Doing good. And also joined in by Patrick Brown, host of the Grind Line, Arizona Coyotes credentialed writer, all around great guy. Pat, how you doing today?
Doing great. And Peter, what the heck? I missed the Frozen Four because of you. So thanks for that.
The messages are going to be long and hateful. I could guarantee.
Hey, really excited to be on. Thanks for having me on, boys.
Yeah, so debut on the Prospect Corner. And of course, we're going to be talking about Arizona Coyotes and the under 18s and the draft, all that fun stuff. Just before we get going, though, I want to make sure you guys know about the Morning Skate newsletter. We mention it every show and every other show on YouTube. Make sure you're signed up for that daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday, jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. Daily dose of the latest news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, etc. Just a little hockey fun information brought to you every day of the week by the Hockey Writers. You'll see a link in the show description, so definitely take a look at that, and you won't regret it. It's great content right in the morning. Have your coffee and take a look at that newsletter. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the Arizona Coyotes, but before we get to that, we're gonna start with the 2022 under 18 tournament that's going on in Germany right now. Started this morning, a couple games in the books already. First 6-2 win, Finland 6-2 win over Switzerland. Joachim Kemell had a goal in that one. Then Czechia over Germany. Yuri Kulik had a couple goals in that, and their 4-2 win that just finished about 15-20 minutes ago. So 2 games already there. One that started 15 minutes ago. Sweden and Finland. I missed out. Sweden and Latvia. Sweden and Latvia are starting their game right now. And then, of course, Canada and the U.S. Coming in about an hour or so. So that's a big rivalry that's going to go on their first game. Yeah, I mean, let's start with this. Peter, we'll start with you. Who are you watching in this tournament? I mean, already Kamell's got a goal. Kulik, another guy that everyone's watching. He's got a couple. Who are you watching in this tournament? So to get going here, because this is a big showcase just before the draft.
Short answer is going to be everyone, because there's so many great talented prospects that that are just at the top of their game right now. I mean, you talked about Kemell, Kasper Kulonumi, who had a really strong game as well. Someone I wanted to keep my eye on for Finland's defense as well. But even going beyond the 22 draft class, 2023. You're seeing Adam Fantilli and Connor Bedard with Team Canada. You're looking at, Leo Carlson, Otto Stenberg and Theo Lidstein on Sweden. It's just absolutely phenomenal with the amount of talent that's there. So there's a long list of players right now that's just, I can't pick one. I really can't, because it's just really exciting time right now.
Cop out.
For sure. Yeah.
Sorry.
You took the easy answer.
You're supposed to let
Easy
the
way out.
guest
Easy way
take
out.
the cop out.
Okay, that was the easy way out. If I wanted to go and, the difficult route, I'm going to say Liam Ohgren from Sweden, mainly because he's just one prospect that really, not necessarily polarizing in the sense that, his play is either good or bad or anything like that, but he just dominated the J20 circuit, didn't really quite find his footing in the senior level in the SHL with Djurgården. So you want to try and get that gauge where, if he's going to have another dominant competition at this age level, great. But if he's able to translate that at the next level, that's something you want to see. But the point totals, the intensity, the work ethic, it's all there for him.
For sure. I mean, he's part of that quartet for Team Sweden. That's just, we'll talk about them a little later. But Pat, we'll go over to you. Who are you watching in this tournament? I know with the Arizona Coyotes, they're going to have some high draft picks. So they're going to be looking at a lot of these guys, these high-end guys. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, you better believe. Actually, it's funny in my notes I have, who will be watching closely, the Arizona Coyotes, and absolutely right. I'll have a few shameless plug moments in this show, and this is going to be the first one because I just completed actually a couple of draft profiles for the upcoming 2022 draft. So we're talking USA versus Canada, right? And I'm going to look at USA, look at Frank Nazar. And what he did. I just finished a profile on him published earlier this week. Go Blue, by the way, University of Michigan commit. Averaged over a point per game at every level. Interested to see what he's going to do. And then on the flip side of that, Logan Cooley, who, again, I know we're going to talk about him later. Again, doing some research because I wouldn't put myself on the same level as you guys. Know enough to be dangerous, but was actually surprised at how similar their numbers are. And just wondering if anybody might set themselves apart. Now, we're going to talk about Cooley in a little bit. I've got some thoughts on Cooley and being, I don't want to say a steal at 2 because I don't think you could say that, but I think he's made a good case to be at the very, very top of this draft class. And I'm curious if he can do something to separate himself from Nazar, because from what I have seen, their numbers are strikingly similar this year. So those are my 2 that I'm going to keep an eye on.
Yeah, a couple great names there. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about them for sure. Devin, finish this off. Who are you watching in this tournament? Lots of great talent being showcased. Too bad it wasn't over here where the time zones are a little different, but who are you looking at?
Well, you know me, I'm always kind of looking out to see how things relate to the Red Wings. So I'm going to be looking at some Swedes. And the Swede I'm looking at is Jonathan Lekkerimaki. Because I think there's a very real chance that he could be the guy they end up going with their top pick. He's kind of projected in that range right now. And I just want to see him strut his stuff in the tournament. I want to see him stand out. I want to see him look like a top 10 prospect in this draft class. And I just kind of want him to basically be a name brand player after all of this.
Yeah.
Like I want more people to be talking about Jonathan Lekkerimaki after this tournament's done.
Yeah. Lekkerimaki is just, he's just such a talent, especially with the trio that he plays with. Or duo that he plays with. It's pretty fun to watch. I know they're never probably going to be on the same team together because they're all going to be drafted by different teams, I'm sure. But it's fun to watch them together. And again, they'll be together for Team Sweden, and this, they are together at this tournament right now. I'm watching a lot of those guys as well. It's just fun to watch. It's too bad we couldn't watch it. The streaming isn't the best to be able to watch these games over here, but we'll hear stuff. I mean, Twitter's, the guys, they seem to be able to get the footage and show us stuff on Twitter. So we'll get some stuff there. So guys at The Athletic and stuff like that, they get their stuff. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, just to touch on a few of these guys, let's start with the dominant duo that should dominate this tournament for Team Canada, and Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli. These are 2 guys that are not going to be drafted this year. They're going to be drafted next year. 2 guys that could be superstars, and what a 1-2 punch for Team Canada. I mean, start with, we'll talk to Peter. We'll just go to each one for each of these questions. Not spend too much time. We're going to talk a lot about this with the Coyotes too, a lot of these guys, but Bedard and Fantilli, Peter, what do you like about these guys? I mean, of course, we've talked about Bedard. Let's focus a little more on Fantilli because we haven't really talked about him yet. Do you think these 2 are going to dominate the tournament? I mean, how are you going to defend against the two centermen like this?
Yeah, it's similar to like what happened last year with Shane Wright and Bedard, and even that stacked Team Canada team was just absolutely dominant. And the fact that they were able to get him and Adam and Fantilli onto this roster, you still got a dynamic 1-2 punch down the middle. I mean, that's just not going to be fun for anybody. Yeah. I mean, despite a slow start and not just averaging either above or just below a point per game in his first 20 or so games, Connor Bedard finished with 51 and 100. And then you go over and you look at Adam Fantilli's numbers in his first, and not necessarily his first, but his second season with the Chicago Steel. And it's just lights out, 74 points in 54 games, had 36 last year, really great production. And he just continues to get better. I mean, they're both phenomenal talents. They're both, I mean, we talk about, two elite level prospects and franchise players in Matvei Michkov and Connor Bedard. Adam Fantilli is slowly creeping into that category. I wouldn't say slowly. I think he's already in that category right now, where if you were to pick 1, 2, or 3, you could have 3 different combinations. I think maybe you still go Michkov Bedard at 1, but if you can make a case for Adam Fantilli too, especially if he has a strong tournament, which I think he's going to have based on his speed, the smarts, the IQ that he possesses, I think he's going to make a big buzz and maybe close the gap between the top 2 in the 2023 draft. But yeah, looking forward to see what both can do. I mean, we already know what Bedard can do. For those that haven't seen Fantilli, I know I saw quite a bit of him with the Red Wings in the GTHO, that showcase in the OHL Cup against Shane Wright's Don Mills Flyers. That was a really great matchup. Again, I knew from that moment on that he was going to go on to really great things, and everyone's going to get to see why.
Yeah, and again, these are 2023 draft picks. These are not 2020.
Right, junior Canadians, not the Red Wings. Sorry, that was my mistake. It was the junior Canadians. Yeah, too many. Yeah, original 16.
I got excited when you said Red Wings. Like, oh, he knows something.
Too
many original 16s in the GTHL.
Yeah, and they're 2023. They're not 2022. Yep. So this is going to be fun. This is the first. I mean, Bedard was in last year's tournament too, and he was pretty good. So Fantilli's just gonna. I say the same thing. He's gonna close that gap for sure.
I'm gonna correct myself again. It was the Red Wings. So yeah, it's that kind of
what you said the first time.
Yeah, it was what I said the first time. I'm looking at elite prospects, and I saw junior Canadians. That was before he went to that. So yeah, I'm off to a great start here.
Don't second guess yourself, Peter. Never second guess yourself.
Yeah.
Well, moving over to you, Pat. You mentioned Logan Cooley already and Frank Nazar. You're pretty well versed on Nazar for sure. We talked about Rutger McGroarty on Howlers and Growlers as well.
Yes, we did
in the past. So this is a trio that Team USA has this tournament. Same question: are these guys going to dominate? I mean, you talked about Nazar. Talk a bit about McGroarty. I mean, I really like him. I think he's probably one of the more skilled guys. I think he's a top 15 pick.
Yep.
What do you think about these 3?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting and to see these 3 together. Really quick, just going back to Bedard for 5 seconds. I think it says a lot that Coyotes scouts are already talking about Bedard, and we haven't even hit the 2022 draft. I think that says a lot about his skill level and where he's at. I just wanted to remark about that really quick.
Yeah.
Jumping back to you at Team USA, Rutger McGroarty, first of all, best name in the draft, right? Have we agreed on that already? We've agreed on that, right? I know there's got to be one. And I don't think we've ever had a potential top 15 as the best name in the draft. So that's exciting. Yeah. But it's going to be great to see what they can do. I think Team USA is going to be able to, at that level, how much does age make a difference? I think it might set them apart a little bit. I think it might give them the edge, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But to see how McGroarty can team up with a loaded U.S. roster, I'm excited to see. I expect big things. I'll put a little spoiler alert for later. I expect the U.S. to take gold, and I think he's going to be a big part of that. So. That's kind of how it breaks down to me. I'm excited to see how the U.S. stacks up against Canada. I mean, Canada's scoring for days on that team, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they stack up. But I think Team USA might be able to use its experience, its slightly older star players to its advantage.
That team is going to be fun to watch, and I don't know. Well, speaking of offense, let's talk about more in the quartet or trio plus a defenseman of Lekkerimaki, Ohgren, Ostlund, and Odelius, who's the defenseman there for Team Sweden. Devin, you talked about Sweden, so let's go to you on this. It stacked up pretty nicely, actually. I didn't even plan that. So, I mean, Devin, what do you think about these four? I mean, on Team Sweden, talked about Canada and the US. What about Sweden? I mean, they could be a dark horse here, too.
Well, I think it's fitting that coming off of yesterday's episode of Grindland, where we had Keith Dave, who wrote the book about the Russian Five, here we are. We're going to talk about the Swedish Four. Yeah. All four of them kind of have a skill set that will enable them to kind of play off of each other really well. And that's why I kind of lumped them together like the Russian Five, because you've got your shooter in Lekkerimaki, you've got your playmaker in Ostlund, you've got your guy who kind of do a little bit of everything, your Swiss Army knife in Ohgren, and then you've got your two-way defenseman who does a little bit of everything as well in Odelius. So I think that as a quartet, they are that's about as good as it gets in this tournament. There's a lot of skill in that amongst those four players. And I talk about Lekkerimaki being a potential top 10 pick. Ohgren's potentially a top 25, top 20 guy. So lot of skill in that amongst those four. And I think that they're going to, like I said, play off each other well. And I would not be surprised if they're kind of the key components to pushing Sweden into a really competitive spot in this tournament.
Well, they're lighting it up for the Djurgården, that's for sure. So I love to be a fan down there watching them every night. So, I mean, and of course, they're going to be well, they may not leave right away. They'll probably be playing for that team for a bit. So, I mean, let's move to this predictions. Pat, you already gave yours there, except for, we'll ask you for a bronze medal prediction then. Peter, start with you. Who's your gold medal? Who's going to be in the final, and who's going to be your bronze?
It's going to come down to Canada and Sweden for me. I think both offenses are extremely dynamic. I think the sticking point for Canada, their big question mark is definitely going to be in net. Nolan Lalonde, Reed Dick, and Ethan Buenaventura. All three had, their numbers with their respective junior clubs weren't the best, but we saw how well Reed Dick performed at the CHL Top Prospects game. That's something that we should keep an eye on. I think maybe he's going to be the starter. Based on that alone, has some experience against some top competition. Can the defense hold up? That's going to be the main question. I know Sweden has a really solid foundation, both for 2022 and 23 as well. Forward's great, defense great. I think they had this slight edge over in goaltending, and I think it's going to come down to either of those two, for gold or silver. Either or, I can't pick between the two because it's really close neck and neck. But I think bronze medal. I think it's going to go to. I sorry, Patrick, but I think the U.S. is going to come up with the bronze medal again. Dominant forward group, but then again, they don't have that wow factor on defense aside from Seamus Casey. They got great players, but it's just one dynamic player out of all of them. You got Ryan Chesley, who's like a smart two-way player, but the offense really isn't clicking. You want to see how well everyone else is playing, and compared to goaltending in the against other teams, I just don't think they quite have it at the moment compared to Canada, Sweden, or even Finland with a Topias Leinonen. But those I think are going to be my top three.
Those are great choices there. Moving you, Pat, you gave your gold medal prediction. Who are they beating in the final, and who's your bronze medal?
So I got U.S. over Latvia. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, there's always one team that surprises.
There's always the dark horse, right? Well, I'm not calling the dark horse out. U.S. over Canada, gold, silver, and then Sweden bronze. I think. I don't know. Again, I don't claim to be experts like you guys, but I just don't see any team other than those three making the top three in some way, shape, or form. I kind of talked about the US's experience potentially being used to its advantage. So I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to see how it plays out. And US, Canada, Sweden, gold, silver, bronze. That's my prediction.
There you go. Devin, who's your predictions, gold medal, and who's in the final, and then who's your bronze?
Well, it seems like we're all kind of sharing the same notes here. I have the exact same what's it called? Lineup as Peter, with Canada winning gold, Sweden with silver, and US and bronze. And I do want to give a quick kind of shout out to Finland, because I do think that they could make some noise. They always do in any sort of international tournament. So I wouldn't write them off completely. I would not be surprised if they snuck in and won a medal. But yeah, like I said, Canada, Sweden, US.
I'm going to echo. I'm going to say it's Canada. I think it's Canada, Sweden final, Canada, Sweden, and then US with the bronze, and Finland is going to be in that spot in that bronze medal game as well. So, because Finland, you never count them out. So it's best not to do that, because they seem to always surprise everyone in any of these terms. They play such a structured game all the time. Doesn't matter who's on that team. So, so.
I was just about to say, there's also this kid by the name of Aaron Kiviharju, 16 years old, who's already looking very good. So not just 2022 and 23, but 24 as well for that draft. So yeah,
it's going to be fun the next few drafts, I think, especially 2023. And there's some guys 2024 already kind of sneaking in there too. So you got to start thinking about that. It's going to be fun. So let's move on to the Coyotes part of this show and start with the draft coming up. And Pat, that's why you're here. You're going to be talking about the Coyotes here. They currently have 3 first rounders in this draft, barring the Avalanches getting a top 10 pick if they win the lottery, which probably not going to happen. They're tops in the league. They're probably going to win the President's Trophy. They'd have to be a really great. They won't be winning the lottery because their pick won't be there. So you'll probably have 3. You're probably going to have 3 first rounders in this draft. So, and 4 second rounders. What should the Coyotes' philosophy be in this going into here? I mean, they've got some holes prospect wise.
Oh yeah.
You know, who should they be targeting? Types of players, type of thing.
At this point, I think it's best available. I hate to be so cliche like that, but you know, when Chychrun departed a couple of years ago, the cupboard was empty. And Bill Armstrong's come in collecting assets like crazy. I know the terms of OEL's departure to Vancouver, people had mixed feelings, but the fact that he ended up getting the 9th overall pick, which then brought in Dylan Guenther, who again we'll talk about later, I think speaks volumes to what he's trying to do. And at the same time, you see him picking up contracts of these middle-aged prospects, these 23, 24, 25-year-old prospects that, as he has said, the organization is lacking right now. Yeah. So heading into the draft, I think Armstrong's just going to be looking at best available. Don't go taking a goalie in the first round. You know, like, and it's not. Armstrong has shown kind of, he hasn't been secretive about what his plans are. One thing to remind everybody about 3 first rounders, of course, they've got their own, which could very well be the top overall pick. And then they've got Montreal's from the Christian Dvorak deal. And who would have thought after Montreal was in the final last year that all of a sudden, because it was a conditional first rounder, they're not getting Montreal's pick. They're getting Carolina's pick.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at the Coyotes have their pick, which is going to be substantial, top 3 at least. You got to think. And then Carolina and Colorado. So you got that top overall, but then those next 2 are almost could be borderline second rounders, which not that there's anything wrong with that, to quote Seinfeld, but but it's not like they're getting 2 top 10, 2 top 15 even picks. They're the other first rounders they have are going to be late rounders. So you take the best available. You need help at every position. Certainly you want to see them start upping their defensemen that are in the organization, because there's just not a whole lot of anything there. So Bill Armstrong going to be looking at best available, hopefully, and you go from there. But that would be my expectation. I don't see anything crazy like potentially. Well, we'll talk about this in the next one, but trading up or anything if they don't land number 1. But we could talk about that in a little bit. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
There you go. Peter, have anything to add to that, of what you think the Coyotes should be doing at this draft, or Pat kind of hit on everything there?
No, Pat nailed it on the head. I mean, you don't want to address need. You just go for best player available, given how bare their prospect system is, aside from Dylan Guenther. You know, you got to build up. And obviously, we're getting the first overall pick. If they do get it in the lottery and they draft Shane Wright, boom, bonus right there. But what they're going to do with their final 2 picks is going to be interesting because, according to Cap Friendly, Arizona occupies the 30th and 31st spot. So you have back-to-back picks to try and make it count. I don't want to, bring up my mock draft, but at the same time, my recent one with 31 and 32, based on the standings at that time, I had Arizona taking Yuri Kulik and Cali Odelius. You get an extra centerman, help build out that depth, and you also get a strong puck, two-way puck moving defenseman who can fill out your top 4. Obviously, you'd like to have or bring in a top tier defenseman. Odelius could improve into that slot, but I think he's going to be better as a top 4. But unless you try and do that, you're getting a really great offensive player in Kulik, and the smarts and Odelius really balances everything out. There are also other names that you can try and keep an eye on as well. I mean, there's still Ryan Chesley as well, who could be a late first. Luca Del Belbaluz, who played against Shane Wright again in that OHL Cup with the Toronto Red Wings as well. He stood out, and I remember Toronto Red Wings again this time. But then there's players in the second round that could sneak their way in. Does David Goyette do enough at this tournament to try and be a second forward that they could try and pick up? Owen Pickering, he's a lot of them have him as a top 20. Personally, I still just don't see enough to his game to move him that high. But if they get him as a late first, there's that possibility as well. Owen Beck, Isaac Howard appears to be in that range as well. Do they go for another winger to try and fill out that depth? So the options are endless, and there's still quality talent. If they make an off the board pick, kind of like what the Ottawa Senators did, drafting a 4th rounder in the 2nd round as a late first, and that's really questionable. Or even the Chicago Blackhawks drafting Nolan Allen. I can't see that, but I think they'll try and keep everything smart, and they got to plan it up ahead.
For sure. Devin, anything to add to this discussion about what the Coyotes should be doing at this draft coming up?
So the strategy definitely has to be best player available, has already been said. I don't really think that, especially with those last 2 first round picks, you can't really pick your player until the pick is up. So the other thing I want to add, and I think Pat was kind of alluding to this, if there's one team that I think can make some movement in the first round, and by that I mean moving up, I think it's the Arizona Coyotes, because they have bullets in the chamber, not just their 2 first round picks, but those extra 2nd round picks. They can put together a nice little package to move up. So what I want to see the Arizona Coyotes do, and this kind of goes to my answer, I would like to see them add at least 2 difference makers to their system. One with their top pick, whether it's Shane Wright, Logan Cooley, or whoever, and then get at least one other guy that can really be a building block for their future. And I think one way to really kind of guarantee they get that is to trade up, maybe up into the top 20, get somebody who's maybe fallen a little bit, or just somebody that they really like and has some good upside. Like I said, they've got the ammunition to do it, and I'd like to see Bill Armstrong be aggressive to help boost his prospect pool.
Yeah, Pat.
I do want to say I had a note and I didn't mention it, and I do want to call out as well that by all accounts, Bill Armstrong has assembled the best staff of scouts that the Coyotes have ever seen.
Yeah.
So that's yet another reason to trust take the best available on your ranking. Don't do anything crazy. Don't trade a bunch of assets to trade up 1 spot so you could pick Shane Wright, who's not generational. He's a great player, but not generational. Yeah. So don't do anything crazy. And then I had that in my notes, and I forgot to mention that, just in passing, and talks with Craig Morgan in the press box and everything else. It's Bill Armstrong has assembled a team of scouts that the likes of which the Coyotes have never seen before until this year. It's tough when you're deep into the throes of a scorched earth rebuild that the Coyotes are right now. They've currently lost 9 straight, and they have the Blues tonight, so good luck. But it's been impressive to see their body of work to this point this year. We'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I wanted to throw that out there because I forgot to mention it for anybody watching. Obviously it's not just the GM making these decisions. You have to trust the process. You have to trust the boots on the ground who are out there watching these kids every day. And I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. 4 second-round picks that you can easily move up or pair up with one of those
100%.
first. So pick your poison.
Yeah, well said. I mean, you guys were answering the next question within all that, so I won't ask it again. Let's move to the other side of it and talk about a little bit about Jakob Chychrun, whose, that deal was in the works, seemed like it was going to be in the, was in the works before the deadline. The Coyotes decided not to pull the trigger on it. Could they do it at the draft? I mean, we talked about that, moving those picks, and could they add another one like they did with OEL to the Canucks there and trade another big defenseman for a haul of a top end first round pick? Pat, well, you're best equipped to answer this question. What do you think?
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think at some point Chychrun absolutely gets dealt. His health was a bit of a concern this year. He hasn't played a whole lot, but that may be by design as well. And now that yesterday they gave away the Jakob Chychrun Thor bobblehead, now he can be moved. I firmly believe that he wasn't moved because they had 5,000 of those bobbleheads.
Exactly.
It was a hot commodity yesterday, by the way. More 14,000 fans. It was crazy. Most fans I've seen all year at Gila River. Anyways, I digress. I think you absolutely see Chychrun move now. What I would see happening, not so much for help this year, I could see Chychrun being moved thinking ahead to the 2023 draft, kind of like what the Darcy Kemper deal did, kind of like what the Christian Dvorak deal did with bringing in assets for next year. Because you look, they're pretty light right now on the 2023 draft. Now, the summer is going to follow the same blueprint that last summer followed. Armstrong is going to take on bad contracts and assets off teams who want to unload a bunch of people. I'm sure Ken Holland might be on the phone already. I don't know. But so that's going to follow the same blueprint. He's going to get assets that way, put together what he calls a hungry team with these guys on just awful contract trying to prove something. And every now and then it happens. Gostisbehere had a solid year for the Coyotes this season. Andrew Ladd, who had him hitting 1,000 games with the Coyotes this year after the last 2 or 3 years that he's had. He's a great story. So there's something to come from that, but I think Chychrun gets dealt. I think he gets dealt not for anything necessarily this year, because I think Armstrong has enough assets to work with if he wants to move up. I think he's going to be looking ahead to the 2023 NHL draft and try to accumulate assets for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's best to move a 2023 draft. You get as many picks in that draft as you can.
Yep.
It's ridiculously deep. First, second round, it's going to have some elite talent there. So if you can get another first round pick, I don't think a lot of GMs you're going to have to do a lot to get them from these guys. But if you can do it, definitely do it. Even if you can get some second round picks in the 2023, you're going to get some good players. Yeah. So, that's, I think, a best deal to do rather than getting some more for this draft. Definitely agree with that. Just to finish off this discussion with some quick things. Peter did his first, he mentioned the mock draft there. Let's just talk about, I always talk about at the top of the draft, we talked about with Haiti for the Montreal Canadiens. If the Coyotes got the first overall pick, I mean, Shane Wright, is he the pick? Or are you going for a guy like Cooley? It seems obvious, but what do you think, Pat?
I think it speaks volumes that you're asking the question. Is what I think. Shane, and by the way, I take Shane Wright. I take Shane Wright first overall. But what's interesting, and I'm sure it's been talked about a bunch, is Wright. I mean, he's been your wire to wire overall unanimous number one pick, but Cooley has made up some major ground, and there's an argument to be made, and it would be a spicy take, but there's an argument to be made. But look, I could see justification for it, but at the same time, I I think Shane Wright's still number one overall. I think pretty much everybody still agrees with that. And if you have the number one overall pick, you're taking Shane Wright. If you have the number two overall pick, you are absolutely thrilled to be taking Logan Cooley. Don't get me wrong. But if you've got the number one overall pick, you're taking Shane Wright. And one more thing to that note, I think I alluded to it before, but this isn't a situation if you've got the number two overall pick where you're looking to trade up for Shane Wright. You are perfectly happy taking Logan Cooley and not giving up any other assets for it. But if you have the number one overall pick, Wright's your guy.
100%. I mean, Peter and Devin and I have talked about this. I mean, the talk about Wright not being number one is kind of ridiculous with, I mean, the season he had. But on the same side of it, Cooley has had a ridiculously good season too. And he's probably going to have a great under 18s and a World Juniors coming up as well right after that. I'm sure he'll be still named to the team. I don't think US is going to leave him behind. And he'll be drafted already by then. So, a team's going to be watching him, and he'll already have a team with him. So this under 18s is probably his last chance to really force his way into that discussion. So it's going to be fun. We talked a bit about the guys that they could pick. So maybe we'll skip over that unless Pat, Devin, you have anyone that you want to kind of add to Peter's list that he kind of gave in his answer before?
I want to throw my second and final shameless plug out there from the week that was, because I'll be honest with the group. You guys know I'm just kind of getting into prospects like a little more heavy than I ever have been. And my second profile that I did this past week on Kevin Korchinski, boy, he kind of shot out of nowhere this year to the point where he's being talked about now as the
I see that smile, Peter. I see it.
Oh yeah. I've got a smile from ear to ear.
To the point where he's being talked about as the top defenseman in the draft now. What he's done out in Seattle is nothing short of meteoric. And it was really interesting. It was really interesting. I had a lot of fun doing his profile, doing some research, watching his style of play, watching how he's grown with Seattle this year. And I just figured I'd throw a shameless plug out there for someone who maybe doesn't have the name flashiness to everybody watching at home, but has put the work in and really made a name for himself. And as far as I could see, is considered by many now to be potentially the top D-man in the draft.
I want to say Denton Matejchuk is in there too. I have a 10 overall. So Matejchuk is in that discussion, but Korchinski, he's sure shot up the rankings. Like, my gosh, we talked about FC Hockey had him at 7 in their latest. So, I mean, it seems like they love him over there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where NHL Central Scouting puts him at the final rankings that come out before the draft. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Peter, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm good.
I thought you had
I'm
happy. Good stuff.
I want to throw out real quickly that I think that the Arizona Coyotes are the perfect team to take a shot on Ivan Miroshnichenko because they have those extra picks. And obviously there's that risk involved with his health situation right now. But I think when you have those extra picks that you can kind of, roll the dice with, I think that's the team, or at least one of the teams that is in a good position to take a chance on him.
And especially if you have the centerman and Wright. You have that shooter and physical player that can play with the size and get into the corners to play on his wing, possibly in the future. And I don't know. I believe Dylan Guenther could play both the left or right side, but if you have Miroshnichenko, Wright, and Guenther as your top lines,
what a line!
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Solving problems right here. Love it.
It's fun. That's great. Great way to end that conversation. So let's reset the show. This is the Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers, joined in by Peter, Devin, and special guest Pat Brown from the Grind Line and Coyotes credential writer there. So great to have him on the show. And to remind you to sign up for the Morning Skate newsletter. Great newsletter given to you every day of the week, Monday to Friday. Sign up at morningskate.io. Great content there from the writers. Lots of great stuff that's not on the website. So definitely check that out. Morningskate.io. Just link in the bottom in the description there. let's move on to guys that are already in the system of the Coyotes, not guys that are going to be. These are guys that are here. So let's start with everyone's favorite prospect on the Coyotes. I know, and he's mine, especially because the Canucks could have got him, but Coyotes have him. So Dylan Guenther, I mean, I'm sure everyone knew the name I was going to say. Hands down, he's a top prospect for the Coyotes. I mean, that's just, I don't think anyone can argue that. Pat, what do you think his ceiling is? I mean, he's had a ridiculously great season with the Oil Kings, 45 goals, 91 points in 49 games. He already has a goal in the playoffs already too, of course. So what is the ceiling? I mean, is this guy going to be a superstar 50 goal scorer, or, even if he's not that, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's got that potential for sure. I think when he was still available at 9 and the Coyotes were able to take him, there were a lot of people surprised because they felt like he slipped a little bit there. So selfishly, the Oil Kings, what a fun team to watch between Guenther and Kosa. And really, they've been fun to follow this season. And that's one of the things you need to remember, though. He's playing on a really, really good team.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, you don't want to take anything away from him. We all know my Michael Bunting hate for the Calder's just because nothing against him. Nothing against him.
Bring it on.
Nothing against. I'm actually still bitter that the Coyotes didn't bring him back, to be honest, because everybody wanted to see him. He just didn't fit into the rebuild. Like, he just didn't fit in as the older rookie. But I digress. I'm driving the own train off the rails. Let's talk about Dylan Guenther, because he's absolutely the real deal. But man, this kid, he's got to bulk up. He's got to grow into his big boy body. And I don't want to put too much emphasis on that, because guess what? A lot of people said that about Clayton Keller. And Keller was in the midst of a career year before that awful injury a few weeks ago. He's doing much better. They expect a full recovery, which is good. But I kind of liken him almost to a Clayton Keller, especially with his size, because he is a little bit undersized. But it doesn't bother him. It didn't bother him in the NHL preseason, where wishful thinking. Some folks were talking about him earning a spot. There was no chance. And spoiler alert: he's not going to earn a spot next year either. You don't want to put him in that environment. You don't want to put him in that rebuilding environment right now. Let him excel with the good teams right now and build up and bulk up and things like that. And that's what you need to see. He needs to grow. He needs to put on some mass. He's too small. He got the potential to do it. He's still a kid, but I think that's really what's going to determine long-term what his success is. He's got the skill level. There's no doubt about that. You've seen all the hashtag spicy dill. It's all over Twitter all the time. And it's fun to watch. And frankly, for your diehard Coyotes fans out there, it's what they're holding on to right now. It's what is getting them through this season are the Dylan Guenther highlights. So he's absolutely the real deal. He's going to be a superstar with the Coyotes when the time comes, but fans need to be patient. He needs to develop the right way and keep letting him have 90, 100-point seasons. See how he fares with the Roadrunners and the AHL or wherever the next stop is for him. Just be patient and let him go through the appropriate motions.
Well, you definitely develop him properly, because he has potential to be, I think, like I said this before he was drafted, I thought he was going to be a 40-goal scorer in the NHL. I did a profile. No, I didn't do his profile, but I did one talking about the Canucks picking him potentially before they traded that pick. But I'm not bitter. Guenther's definitely the real deal. I'm sure Peter and Devin, you're going to say the same stuff Pat just said. So not to repeat, but he's going to definitely be a heck of a player in the NHL. But gotta wait for him to get developed, because you do it properly, he's going to be a special player for a decade. So kind of just have to wait for him. Let's move on to a couple other guys that were just signed by the Coyotes and acquired as well. Jack McBain and Nathan Smith. Pat, you're right there at Gila River Arena. You watch them up close. What do you think about them? Long-term potential or of what they're going to do for the Coyotes? Are they just kind of those throw-in prospects, not going to make a huge impact, but just be there? What do you think?
I don't want to call them throw-in prospects. They suit a need in the organization right now. Armstrong's been clear that the franchise lacked rookies, prospects at that age level, right? Anywhere from your early to mid 20s that you're seeing these kids come out of college, and they didn't have neither McBain nor Smith had the opportunities with their respective organizations, so they weren't going to sign. And so Armstrong swooped in. He was clear about they had their eye on McBain since last summer. So shout out to Nate Smith, first NHL goal against the Blackhawks a few days ago. Was really happy to see that. McBain played a heck of a game yesterday against the Capitals, matched up even coach Andre Torini. I mean, McBain hit 2 posts, and he was matched up against Ovi, Kuznetsov, and Wilson. And it's just funny because even Andre Torini was like, "Welcome to the big leagues, kid." and he had a great game. McBain uses his size to his advantage. And he's a very skilled player. But I've been really impressed with what Smith has brought to the table. You could tell he's a hard worker. Really moves his legs, gets involved, isn't afraid to get dirty, but also has pretty solid vision. You can see the adjustment happening right in front of your eyes. And both of them could play a role. I mean, they're 5 games in, right? It's really hard to tell.
Small sample size.
Anytime these players, and one of the first players I ever took note of doing this was Danny DeKeyser with the Red Wings all these years ago. Anytime these players step in from a college rink right into the NHL and they don't look completely lost, I'm sorry, it's impressive. It is unbelievable to think. You see most players come up the ranks, get some reps in the AHL, some get a lot of reps in the AHL. I'm looking at you, Brian Lashoff. And even when they're out there, it's tough. These guys have looked fine. Nothing to write home about, but it's the Coyotes. Yeah. So I think they really could be. They fill a need right now for sure. I think especially with all the injuries the Coyotes are going. One more thing really quick. Sorry, I know I'm going on and on. The Coyotes have debuted 11 players this season. 11 players have made their NHL debut for the Coyotes. 8 of them came from the AHL. The other 3, Karel Vejmelka, Nathan Smith, Jack McBain. So tip of the cap to those 3. And I think Smith and McBain, keep your eye on them. They've got the skill. Can they find that right chemistry? Remains to be seen, but Armstrong did good by bringing them in.
Yeah, it's a tough situation them coming into a team that's so low in the standings, but they get the opportunity, they get the minutes, and the experience, and it's great to have it, especially at that young age. And like you said, moving into college right away, and from college to the NHL right away, and not looking totally out of it is great sign for the future. They'll develop and hopefully be a big part of the team, or even just a part of the team. It doesn't have to be big. I mean, to be part of the team in the future, right? So especially for a team on the rise for rebuild purposes, it's great to have them in the system. More is better than less when you get prospects. So you get them in there and see what happens. So let's, McBain. I just want to a question about McBain in the system. With the defenseman that the Coyotes do have in the system, where does he rank? Do you think, Pat, in where he is in the Coyotes pipeline right now?
McBain's forward.
Yeah,
forward.
Center,
I thought there was someone a defenseman in there, but McBain's a forward. So my mistake. Where does he rank in the? I did say offense. I'm reading the wrong thing. My God, it's.
I blame Peter. Peter for this. All right.
I wrote it right. I read it wrong. Okay.
You are never going to have me on this show again. Anyways.
Okay. Offense prospect.
So, first of all, like I said, Armstrong was clear when they signed McBain to his ELC that they had their eye on him for a while. He fits the mold for what they want this team to be right now, which is a tough-nosed, grinded-out, gritty team with some skill, and McBain brings that. And you look at him, on lines with, and I mean no disrespect, but like Roussel and Ladd and Eriksson. And that's tough for a kid playing in his first NHL. And that you're trying to find that right combination. And so all of that considered, I think McBain, in terms of a prospect, is right there. And he's where you want those mid-20 level prospects to be. You sign your ELC, burn a year with only a few games left in the season, see how he plays next year, and then you still have him as an RFA, so you can bring him back at. So he fits the mold exactly what Armstrong is trying to carve out, and the identity that Andre Torini has established on this team as a tough-nosed, grind-it-out type player. He uses his size to his advantage. He's not afraid to throw his body around, and he plays confidently. So I think he fits in real well right now with the Coyotes organization.
Yeah, I'm getting mixed up because there was a Jamie McBain, I believe, a few years ago, and he was a defenseman. And I keep getting mixed up between the two. I even searched on Getty when I was looking for a picture of him, and he came up because I typed in the wrong name. So
at least I'm paying attention, and I kind of know what I'm talking about, at least. So that's good. Imagine if I had gone ahead and ranked McBain amongst Arizona's defensemen.
I get mixed up. There's another McBain a few years ago. I can't, but yeah.
The Simpsons McBain memes, by the way, keep them coming. If you're watching at home, keep them coming. There cannot be too many of those. It's phenomenal.
Bane, let's get silly. If you know, you know.
So,
that's the critic.
So let's move on to some more of the more prospects. I mean, the Coyotes have quite a few in Tucson and juniors. We'll start with you, Peter, on this one. What prospect has grown the most since the beginning of this season? I mean, Tucson's been they've brought guys up and down this in call-ups and stuff like that. And there's some guys that have got some NHL experience. And who do you think has grown the most?
He's gotten some looks this season as well. And I'm going to say Jenik. This is one player that I've always really was kind of not necessarily flying under the radar because there's not a whole lot of depth within the Coyote system, but he was always one player that I was always drawn to. He's got the size, the ability to protect the puck extremely well, the offensive awareness, the capabilities that just always stand out every single time he's on the ice. So the fact that he was able to get some looks at the NHL this season and, what he's done in the last year or two, his journey's just been absolutely phenomenal. He's been excelling no matter where he's been. And the fact that he was just under a point per game with 46 and 50 with Tucson this season, says a lot about his growth and his development. So if he's able to try and fill out and be a middle six contributor for the Coyotes down the road, I think they got someone really solid in that regard. And I've always kept going back to him.
Yeah. Jenik. We talked about him in Howlers and Growlers too. So he's definitely rising. Devin, who do you got has improved the most this season from the beginning?
He's a bit older, so take that with a grain of salt. But for me, it's got to be Karel Vejmelka because this dude literally came out of nowhere. Nobody knew who this guy was. I don't even know if Pat knew who he was before the beginning of the season. He's been basically their starter. There was that little period of time where Scott Wedgwood was kind of taking the bulk of the load, but Vejmelka's kind of been one of, if not the brightest story in Arizona this year. He's established himself as an NHL goalie. How good of one, I think remains to be seen, but I do think he's good enough to be in the league, and he's shown that this year. So to rise from a guy that nobody that I knew could rattle him off by memory to now a guy that everybody knows is the goalie in Arizona. Kudos to him.
Everyone had to know how to spell his name, and I spelled his name wrong the first time.
Hey, in your defense there, Matthew, Howlers and Growlers, rest in peace, was the only show. We were the only people to even talk about him before the season started. That was my validation as a hockey writer, to be honest. Was when I saw that, and you got to be happy for Vejmelka, Devin.
Yes,
absolutely. He's, can you believe that his first start with the Coyotes was the first time he ever played North American hockey?
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling what he has achieved in a very, very difficult circumstance in Arizona. Carter Hutton was supposed to be the guy, and I could barely say that without laughing, as you could tell. Great guy, apparently makes very good wine, but best goaltending years are behind him. And a very bizarre trade with the Maple Leafs there. I don't know what the heck that was all about.
Yeah.
Very bizarre trade. And he's still playing in two. Anyway. But yeah, so I'm rambling, and I feel like I'm taking us way over time, and I'm usually on the other show, I gotta crack the whip, so I'll stop. But I like Vejmelka. I really thought I've been impressed with JJ Moser for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you actually have him, I think, a little bit later in the show too. I feel like I'd come up with these names and I'd look further down. I was like, oh, there you go.
It's like, oh.
So I've been impressed with JJ Moser. Didn't expect him to do the things that he's been doing again in a very tough situation in Arizona.
100%. So let's move from the guys that have grown to guys that you're excited to see in the NHL one day. We'll start with Pat. Pat, we'll start with you. Who are you most excited to see? I mean, apart from Guenther, who we've talked about, of course, we're all excited to see him in the NHL one day. Who else? Who you think is that you're excited to see?
It's funny. It's tough outside from Guenther because every other pretty darn good prospect has
already
appeared. Yeah. I'm going to go first. There's a player who I thought had a really good development camp. He hasn't had a very good season in Tucson, but Ty Emberson, I thought he had a really good camp. He looked good in camp. He looked good in preseason. He's not a top prospect by any stretch of the mind, but I hope he gets a shot, and I'll be looking forward to seeing him. I'm going to kind of blend the next topic though. Who I really can't wait to see is British sensation Liam Kirk. Cannot wait to see him. It was so sad when he got injured this year. He's done so many good things to make a name for himself. He had such a great world that I cannot wait to see him. I do think he's going to get the opportunity. And Liam Kirk is my pick for someone who I'm really excited to see, other than Dylan Guenther, who obviously.
Yes, for sure. Devin, who are you excited to see in the NHL one day, or even just in their prime in the NHL, even if they have played already?
My guy is going to be Victor Soderstrom, Swedish defenseman. Swedish, go figure. 11th overall in 2019, I believe it was. And they're taking the slow and steady approach with him. I like that. Arizona has nothing but time on their hands when it comes to developing their guys. And Soderstrom's a guy that I think kind of like Philip Broberg in Edmonton just kind of needs some time and will develop into that guy. It's just a matter of, when. Soderstrom's not going to be a top line defenseman. I don't think. I think he's probably more of a middle guy, or maybe an elite bottom pairing guy. But I do think he's got some serious upside. And I think that he, in his prime, will play a very well-rounded game, will complement some of the brighter pieces on the Arizona Coyotes team.
I like Soderstrom too. You take the slow and steady approach with him, and probably will get rewarded. And Edmonton hasn't seen that reward yet with Broberg, but he's seen some flashes, which we'll see what happened with Soderstrom.
That's not fair, by the way. Soderstrom already played, or I would have picked him. I didn't know we could pick people who already played. That's not fair.
When you said that, I'm like, maybe I should extend it. So you can obviously add
we're good.
If you want
we're
to.
Good. No. I'm sticking with British sensation Liam Kirk.
Is that his proper name?
Yes,
British sensation.
just like Chicago native Brett Lebda back in the day. I don't know why when he played on the Red Wings, they always prefaced it with Chicago native. But here we go. We're off track. Back to you.
That's back there. Peter, who do you have as most? I wanted to pause so we get a clip. Most excited coming after the Coyotes.
So because like Pat and Devin said, we've already talked about the big names. Obviously, we're excited about Guenther, and I was going to say Liam Kirk as well. Just mainly because of the fact that he had
British sensation.
I was going to say you said his name wrong, Peter.
British sensation Liam Kirk. There we go. I mean, he was off to a really good start with, in Tucson. Again, the injury really affected him. I thought he was really going to start strong, make an impression, because he's just kept on playing extremely well. And I think even with Great Britain at that World Hockey Championship tournament.
Yeah.
I think that was the coming out, or like, you know, the show for Kirk, and the fact that he's going to put his name on the map and make it known that, you know what, he is the real deal, that, you know, he isn't just going to be some mid-late round pick that just falls off. He's going to work hard and he's going to grind it out and make his way to the NHL. And I think we saw that. Again, the injury was disappointing, but I think if he was healthy, he would have made his name, and he probably would have done a really great job if he had given an opportunity with a call-up. So, I'm on that whole Liam, British sensation Liam Kirk bandwagon.
Love it.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a name to watch for sure. Mine is Matias Maccelli. I mean, he did play. I believe he did play some games in Arizona eventually. I'm sure we talked about him coming up.
Yeah.
So,
he's still playing.
Oh, there you go. So, I mean, he had 55 points in 44 games in Tucson, lighting it up there. So we'll see what he does in the NHL long term, but I'm excited to see him. So let's finish it off before we get to our quick fire round, which I hope will be quick fire. And
I'll make it fast. I promise. You're never having me back on this show. You are never having me back.
It's great. It's great. So, I mean, underrated. Let's talk about some underrated prospects that aren't the big names. I mean, Liam Kirk can probably be thrown in there. A lot of people probably aren't looking at him. But anyone else in the system that's underrated? We'll start with you, Devin, on this one.
Well, I'm glad that Peter, when he was talking about Jan Jenik, kind of said under the radar, because that's where I was going with it, because Jan Jenik is my pick. He does kind of float under the radar, but when you look at his stat line this year, he's got to tearing stuff up. I think he could make a real solid push to be a Arizona Coyote next year. So he's not somebody that people talk a lot, but I would wager that people will be talking about him a bit more heading into next season.
Yeah, Jan Jenik has been really good. So, I mean, underrated, but he's not a big flashy name that everyone talks about. But yeah, he's definitely one to watch moving forward. And he is definitely underrated. Peter, who do you have as an underrated prospect in the Coyote system right now?
I'm going to go with Mannix Landry. Later round pick. Great production during the shortened season, 23 points in 29 games last season with Gatineau, but, didn't quite have that same type of production. I mean, it was on pace, it was on the same range, but nothing like really stood out. But even if the points don't show, the way that he plays a game with the intensity, the work ethic, and the strong sense of tracking down the puck, trying to get body position, I think it's going to go well for him. Even though he's 5'11", 181, again, still maybe can try and grow a little bit more, add a bit more muscle. But I think he's got a foundation to be a bottom six contributing forward that can just be kind of a pain to go up against. And you need those kind of players. And I think he's going to be playing an underrated factor for the Coyotes.
Yeah, I mean, again, that Max Landry is another guy I believe I talked about in that draft class. I really liked him as well. Pat, we'll finish with you. Who's your underrated? Is it Liam Kirk, or you have someone else?
Yeah, I Liam Kirk. One other name I'll throw out there just really quick, Michael Carcone.
Yes.
He just got the nod. He's getting his feet wet. It's fun to watch him. He's got a lot of growing to do. Got to learn the game at the NHL level. But I got my eye on Michael Carcone. I feel like he's flown under the radar for quite some time. Yes. And there's a good amount of skill there.
I agree with Carcone. He was in the Canucks system. I believe they signed him and didn't really do much in there. But it's great to see him reemerge. Because I saw his name and I'm like, I know that guy. So from way back in the Canucks system. So it's great to see him have success. I saw him score his first NHL goal there. That's awesome. Nice. So let's move on to some quick fire questions. Like I say, hopefully these are quick fire. I always seem to I make these questions up and they never seem to be quick. But let's try this. Let's talk about JJ Moser, who I was surprised to see that he was drafted in 2021. I thought he was drafted a lot earlier when, all of a sudden he's in the NHL. He's playing a lot of games. He, other than the big names at the top who have played now, Owen Power, guys like that have played in the NHL now, but he's still the only guy beyond the first round to play a game in the NHL. So he's also been pretty productive, 13 points, 37 games, impressive. I say impressive, but -7 on a team that bleeds goals is pretty good. So
it doesn't score much either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, -7 is actually quite impressive. Pat, we'll start with you. Are you surprised with how fast he's emerged as an NHL player? I mean, he just was drafted. I think he's been on the older side, but what do you think?
Yeah, so early on in the season, I definitely was surprised. But as the season has worn on and he's continued to perform at a high level, you just realize he's a good player. He's a smart player. He puts in the work that he needs to put in. He makes the right decision. I mean, to your point, and I'm not a fan of plus minus. I do not like plus minus, but there's something to it. And you look like Jakob Chychrun was like -28, -29 or something this season. There's something to it. And JJ Moser he's put in the work. I've been impressed with him. It was surprising early in the season, but as the season has worn on, I thought it hasn't been as surprising when you see how hard he works.
Yeah, for sure. Peter, I go to you. Are you surprised with JJ Moser? I mean, I'm sure you covered him in that 2021 draft and looked at him in your rankings. What do you think?
Yeah, considering that he was, kind of an overager at that point as well. Being drafted in the second round, compared to like some of the other names that had more upside, like Heimel Salmi, Scott Morrow, to name a few, Evan Naus defensively, and then you look at forwards like Matthew Nyes, who we were taken before him. So it really is interesting to see how But then again, he was an overager. He probably has a little bit more to his repertoire. He's probably matured a little bit more, rounded out his game. And, it worked out in the Coyotes' favor. I mean, he was able to come up, make an impact immediately, and they got someone promising for their defense core in the future, because at the moment right now, he's going to be that leader until, a bigger name comes up, and he's going to be leading the charge right now. So good on him for that.
Yeah, definitely agree. Devin, finish off this conversation. Are you surprised with Moser, or were you expecting him to kind of come into the NHL because he's on the older side?
I really like what Pat said, where initially definitely a surprise. Wasn't really expecting him to make much noise this year, if any. And then as you go along and as he continues to be surprising, it stops being a surprise. So I think Pat said it perfectly.
100%. I agree with all that. Moser was, he was a surprise to be in the season to do what he did, but now not so much, because he's an established NHL player now. So 37 games, and like I said, his stats are pretty good. Let's move on to, this is a quick one. Dylan Guenther again here, career high in his prime. What is his goal total? His career high, when you look at his NHL career at the end, what will it be his career high, Peter?
For a season or just average?
No, for a season. What's his career season?
I think the expectation is going to be 30-35. I think that's going to be very solid. I think given his production, obviously the transitions to the pro level is going to be a little bit different. But if he's able to, maintain that booming one-timer shot on a power play on that far wing, on the left-hand side on his off wing, I think that's going to go well for him. We saw how well, he scored in the past. We've seen other players score at a great rate. I mean, Phil Kessel has scored multiple goals on a one-timer situation as well. Obviously the opportunity is going to be a little bit better for him because he's going to get that chance right now. I think 30-35 is going to be pretty much where I see him. Maybe 40, maybe the odd one here and there, but I think 30-35 is going to be pretty great production for Guenther.
For sure. Pat, career high for Guenther.
I think when he's in his prime, and if he's got the protection around him in the lineup with a good mix of veteran and rookies, I think you could see a 40 goal scorer, one, maybe 2 seasons in his prime for sure. It's not out of the question. And I'll make it quick because I know I've run way over on every answer. So I could see in his prime, I could see him being a 40 goal scorer.
Devin, you agree? 40 goal scorer, or he's going to hit that, just be that 30 guy?
Devin looks angry.
I think his his peak is 42 goals.
Specific.
Yeah,
I like it. I'm gonna say he's gonna hit 50.
Ooh.
He's gonna hit 50. I'm gonna say
bold prediction.
That is
so.
bold.
I will keep my prediction from earlier when I think I wrote in one of I wrote about him at some point, and I believe I said 50 goals
That's
that he
awesome.
could hit. So
That's
I'm gonna
doable.
say 50.
That's doable.
He's depending on, again, if he has like a guy like Shane Wright feeding him pucks, or even Logan Cooley.
Yep.
Oh my, I don't know if he has a really good centerman.
Well, that's it. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely couldn't
yeah.
agree more. And then, that's awesome.
So there you go.
Well, no, that's
I'll
that's
stick
just,
to it.
You
This is
struck,
recorded,
you struck a
so
point. Yep. I
Go
love
back. We can go back and see. Yeah, so Guenther for sure. Let's talk about, no one mentioned this guy in any of the ones, Josh Doan.
it. Yeah.
Son of course, Shane Doan, who's part of the Arizona Coyotes organization. So it really wasn't a surprise he was drafted there. Considering those bloodlines, what is his ceiling in the NHL? As a quick one to say where he could fit in his ceiling. Devin.
As much as you would love to see him reach the heights that his father did, I think that's setting the bar just a little too high for the guy. I do think he has it in his potential to be a really solid middle six winger. And I think that's kind of where I've got him. Now I'm not going to write off the possibility that he becomes a really top end scorer. He was picked pretty high for a reason, but I'm just not setting the bar at his dad, basically.
Yeah. It's a big big ceiling to say you hit Shane Doan's heights. But Pat, who do you think about Josh? You wrote a feature on him earlier. So what do you think his ceiling could be in the NHL?
Yeah, Devin hit the nail on the head with the middle six for sure. I thought when they drafted him, it was a stretch where they drafted him. I think most people did, but we understand why they did.
Yeah.
It was a really cool moment for Shane. He's given a lot to the team, to the community, and it's really cool to see that. I actually just had the opportunity to talk to Shane Doan a couple days ago, and we talked about Josh a little bit. And let me tell you, he runs by the beat of his own drum. So I think he had a really impressive season at ASU. And I think he can continue to grow, and he'll continue to be a leader at ASU, and he'll lean on Shane for some direction, but he's carving his own path. And I think when it's all said and done, you'll see a really solid middle six forward, with definite leadership capabilities.
Well, how can you not with a dad like Shane, right?
Yeah.
So, Peter, what do you think Josh's ceiling in the NHL is?
Yeah, make it a 3 for 3. I mean, you don't want to set any unreasonable expectations. And even when he was drafted too, I think the main projection was at best second line winger, worst case scenario, really good, strong, steady third line goal scorer that could make a significant impact. So that's how I envisioned Josh Doan as well.
Yeah. Wasn't he in the second go around as well? Coming from, he was passed over in 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
So, he had such a rise that season. So good on him for getting drafted. I mean, he deserved to be drafted there, I think, with what he did in that season. So I'm in the agreement. I don't want to set it too high. I think he'll be that middle six guy, and thrive in the NHL there. So being a guy, doing that is not bad. So middle six, you need those guys. Let's finish this off with, we talked about Karel Vejmelka earlier on there with the guys who've grown the most. With what he's done, he's behind a bad team. I mean, that's, he's not helped a lot in any games. He's given so many high danger chances against him. And it says this question, could he be an elite starter in front, and behind a strong team? Say, like, if he was the goaltender of the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Colorado Avalanche, is he an elite goaltender, Peter?
Well, given the Maple Leafs defense at times, I think, we'll
say Colorado Avalanche.
There we go. How about that? No, but I mean, yeah, he was on a bad Coyotes team that has struggled all season. But even when he came in and the Coyotes were struggling to score goals, I mean, he was there. I believe he had a good stretch of games where his save percentage was way above like 900 or 920. I think at one point I got to go back and look at the stats, but the first few games that he's played, he looked very stellar. I think time will tell. I think that's the main thing you want to look at. He had the promise. You want to see him take that next step forward. You want to see him develop a little bit more, find that consistency. And if he does have a really solid team in front of him, absolutely. But there are situations where, we've seen, good goalies in front of good teams and it just didn't quite work out. If not with the Coyotes, maybe it works out somewhere else. It all depends on the development.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Pat, what do you think about Vejmelka? Elite starter in front of a good team, or, average?
I think average. I mean, again, you got to tip your cap when the team's giving up the most goals in the league and he's still got a save percentage at about 0.90, give or take.
Yeah.
You're seeing him give up. You're seeing him give when he gives up 4 goals a night, he's got a save percentage over 0.90 because he's got 46 saves out of the 50 shots that he took.
Yeah.
So you got to tip your cap. I think he's made some great adjustments and just really happy for everything he's accomplished. He's earned everything. There are some holes in his game that have been apparent throughout the year, especially kind of blocker side. And I just don't see that elite netminder, but I think he is perfect for the Coyotes. He signed that extension. I think it was for 3 years. Was happy for him for that, because at the end of the day, he fits in perfectly with this team. He was an older rookie. He has the ability he can steal a game. He stole a number of games.
100%.
I think, was it Winnipeg? 46 saves and a shutout. His first career shutout. He can steal a game. He's got the size. He's got the dedication, and he's just a good human being as well.
For sure.
So I don't know about elite, but I think he can have a career. I think he can have a career.
Yeah.
100%. Peter knows this. He did that to the Maple Leafs. So
thanks, Matt. Thanks.
I had to do it. The Canucks were able to score on him, so I'm okay with it. He didn't become that elite guy against them, which seems to happen against the Canucks a lot too. So I was actually thinking he would, but Devin, you mentioned Vejmelka on that growth questions. Anything else to add to it? Do you think he can be an elite starter or average guy?
Well, I haven't talked about the Red Wings enough in this episode, so I'm going to bring up a Red Wing that he kind of reminds me of when it comes to projecting him, and that guy is Jimmy Howard. Jimmy Howard was a good goalie. He was not an elite top tier goalie. He was good enough to get the job done for the Red Wings while he was with them. I think Vejmelka kind of fits into that same mold. He can steal a game every now and then. He can be their best player for a stretch of time, but when compared to the high end, top of the line goaltenders in this league, he's not going to be up there with them.
Yeah.
He should be a solid contributor for them for the next couple of years.
Even getting a late start, 100%. Devin, that's a great comparison. Yeah. Even getting a late start, that's a great comparison.
Yeah, no, so Vejmelka, I think he can be. I don't think he's an elite starter, but I agree with that average. Be a good goaltender, and I mean, not everyone can be elite. There's the select guys that win Vezinas and all that, but you need just a solid goaltender that can stop the puck, and that's all you need. So, I mean, we're moving a little over time here, but we always got to do our prospects of the week. Prospects of the week is always our final segment of the night. Let's start with you, Pat. Who's your prospect of the week? It doesn't have to be a Coyote. It can be anyone that you want to spotlight.
My prospect of the week is Kent Johnson, who Devin got me hooked on last year. Let me tell you. And I'll make it brief. I know we're way over time, but as we stand right now, he's got points in consecutive games, 2 assists in consecutive games. He was arguably my favorite player in the 2021 draft, thanks to Devin. And I think he's starting to find his footing. I'm really excited to see how he grows his game and how he progresses. So Kent Johnson is my prospect of the week.
Yeah, Columbus got heck of a player where they got him. I mean, it was high, but
they have to cheer for a Wolverine, and that's delicious.
Yeah, I'm sure they're okay with it. He's going to be a heck of a player. So he already is. Peter, who's your prospect of the week?
I don't know if I've talked about him before. I probably did. I just can't remember. But being part Slovak, I am going with Simon Nemec. Just absolutely tearing it up with the playoffs that he's in right now in Slovakia right now. Looking at the stat line, he's up to 11 points in 14 games, 4 goals, and he only had 1 all season. So he's getting the goal scoring and he's jumping up into the rush quite a bit. But this little bit of stat line from Cam Robinson over at Elite Prospects, he's the 4th most, he has the 4th most points ever by a defenseman in the T-Post Extra Liga playoff history.
Oh,
So
Nice.
that's alone at his age, at 18 years old right now, that's really impressive. And there's a reason why I have him as a top 3 prospect in 2022, because he's just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, you know, with his production, his dominance at the playoffs, he's my prospect of the week.
Yeah, Nemec is going to be interesting to see where he goes in the draft. I mean, could someone take him too over Cooley? I don't know. We'll see. Devin, who's your prospect of the week?
Never highlighted a goalie on this show, so I'm gonna do my first goalie, and that is a guy who's making his NHL debut right now with the Carolina Hurricanes. They're playing the New Jersey Devils, and that is Pyotr Kochetkov, Russian netminder who went 36th overall in 2019. Started this year in the KHL, had a really solid stat line, had a .926 save percentage. And then found his way over here to North America in 15 games with the Chicago Wolves of the American Hockey League. He's 13-1-2 with a .921 save percentage. I'd say he earned that call up. I think that Carolina, with having him in the system and him making his debut right now, I think you look at their goaltending situation, and they've done a pretty good job of kind of transitioning from the Peter Mrazek, Alex Nedeljkovic era to now the Freddie Anderson, Antti Ranta, and Kochetkov generation. So looking forward to many more years of good goaltending in Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina is a heck of a team already. So I'm going to go to a team that is on the rise with Owen Power coming in, and this is JJ Peterka. He is leading the AHL rookies in scoring right now. He's got, we've seen him in international competition and stuff like that. And, on that super line with Tim Stützle for Team Germany. So, I mean, he's been a pretty good prospect for a while, and he's starting to put it together in the AHL and hopefully in the NHL soon too, because I always like these obscure countries. Germany's not so obscure, but they don't produce as much NHLers as some of the others. So whenever I see a guy succeed, it's great to see. And Peterka is I think, be the next great German player to play in the NHL. And there's not many right now, except for Stützle.
I can think of another.
There's someone else. Must be slipping my mind.
Yeah.
But he's not better than Austin Matthews.
Is he better than Michael Bunting?
I mean,
but yeah, Peterka's my prospect of the week.
This has been derailed.
So last question of the night. This goes to you, Pat. Your last word, except for the plug at the end for Morning Skate. We're going to do this every time we have a guest on that covers a team. We're going to give a Prospect of the Year award away. And we did ours last episode. Coyotes. Who's your, we could probably guess who it is, but let's give it to him. Prospect of the Year award. Who are you giving it to?
Well, congrats to Dylan Guenther, because he ran away with it. So
yes.
I've done such a good job of derailing pretty much every comment, every section on here. I can just leave it at that. Dylan Guenther, spicy Dill, no doubt about it. Prospect of the Year, and Coyotes fans are just licking their chops, waiting to see him in action in the NHL.
There you go. So inaugural Prospect of the Year award for the Coyotes. Prospect Corner created. So Dylan Guenther for sure is that he gets that award. Thanks, Pat, for coming on, even though we went quite a bit over time. But when we had Chris Faber on for the Canucks, put us all way over, I think, an hour and a half when he was on. So got us a ton of clips. So we're good. We'll be getting clips, I'm sure. I'm hoping. We didn't go too off. But thanks, Pat, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll definitely be having you back after the draft because we want to talk about the guys that the Coyotes did get and what they did at that draft, because it's going to be fun to talk about. So thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Oh, that's the end of the show. Another Prospect Corner in the books. Thanks to Devin and Peter for joining in with the discussion again at Prospect Corner. Once again, sign up for that Morning Skate newsletter. It's great content every morning. Sign up at morningskate.io. And for sure, follow our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, all that stuff. And don't miss everything that we have on the YouTube channel. We're going to be getting a whole bunch of more short videos coming out as well, and Pat's voice you'll hear on those. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Prospect Corner.